Alrighty. I hung up off the phone so that I could get us started now. Nita, are you on mute? Anita, I think you're on mute, hon. Anita, I'm sorry, Anita, you're still on mute. Anita, Anita, we can't hear you. Can't hear Anita. Everyone. Hello, this is Dina. I think Anita just popped off for a minute. Can you guys hear me all right?
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can anyone hear me? This is Dina. Hello? Okay. Okay. Anita, I was trying to get her
Can't
attention.
hear you, Dina. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, Anita, you were on mute the entire
Is it
time for
just me?
your presentation. Yes. Yeah, we couldn't hear your presentation. Do you want to you were on mute.
Okay.
Do you want to do the presentation again? I think, can we hear you? Can you say something, Anita? See if they can hear you, because they they're saying they can hear me.
Okay.
Can you say a few things? Can we hear? Okay, sounds like we can hear both. So Anita, I think it was just you were on mute. Do you want to do the score intro, or would you like me to jump into the presentation? Okay. Let's go. All right. Okay. All right, folks, give me just a second. I'll get us going here. All right. Here we go. All right. So, thank you, everyone. Hello. By the way, I'm Dina Davis. I am one of the SCORE volunteers, and I specialize in all things people, practice, and people related as it relates to your business, it relates to your talent, as it relates to your workforce. So I've been with SCORE now for actually 4 years. I do these workshops often as Anita permits and requests. Anytime she requests anything from me, I'm always willing to jump in. And this is actually one of my favorite workshops. And I think it's very helpful, particularly for you as a business owner. So, as we go into this, again, I'll give you a little bit of context about things for you to think about for as your HR practice evolves as a business owner. It's a very different perspective from what we typically have of the HR employee relationship. So, some of this may be new, some of this may not. But hopefully it will at least bring context around some of the things for you to consider as a business owner. All right. So, a little bit about me. I have been in my industry now coming up on about 24 years. So, it's basically been my life's work. I've studied my background in my MBA as well as my undergrad. And today I'm just completely immersed in many other different topics that help support the areas that I advise to keep my skills contemporary. So, a number of certifications, and different activities. I do a lot of training and workshops as well, which allows me to do a lot of deep research. And I also practice. So I am able to take this knowledge of what I learn and some of the, we'll call it textbook type things, and be able to show you how to put that into practical, applicable steps, regardless of where you are in your business. And so I just share that because just give you a little bit of passion, or share my passion around what I do and why I think it's so important. And hopefully you will see some areas that highlight for you as well through the presentation. So let's dive right on in. And just so you know, I don't have access to see the chat at this time. So I will be able to answer questions at the end. I just don't, I can't see some of the comments as things are scrolling through the presentation. So I appreciate that. But again, please keep track of any questions that you may have. So when I start this presentation, I think about this slide. When you are a business owner, you have everything on your mind. Now, do you have responsibility for everything in the business? As you grow, obviously, you start to delegate that out by hiring or contracting and things of that nature. But as a business owner, everything is important to you. So when I ask what keeps you up at night, some of these areas may be more or less prominent. Some of these areas may be more or less already engaged in your business, and some of these may be more or less your strengths. So, as we typically do as leaders, we play to our strengths and then we supplement and hire the rest. And so, when I think about this is, I think, a really good snapshot because as a business owner, you're not just thinking about one thing. And however, each of these bubbles, if you'll say, or these thoughts, they have a number of aspects to them. You have strategies, you have compliance, you have business development. So you have so many things that wrap around these bubbles. And you also have the operation of your business and how communication flows from one function or person to another. So there's, again, so many different layers of dynamics that you consider as you are figuring out the best ways to run your business. And the reason I say that is I think of a business as similar to a house. When I go to someone's house, they have certain protocols, they have certain expectations, they have certain routines. And, when you're staying at someone's house, they're going to give you some idea of kind of, what we do certain days so that you can fit into the operation of the house. And think about your business in that same way. Doesn't matter how big your house is. You're inviting someone into your house if you're having them working with you at any point in time, contractor, partner, vendor, whom have you. And think about what do you want that experience to be for people when they work or they come to your house. And that's how I explain that to the executives and business owners that I work with, because we create the environment that we want. We don't simply just respond to everything that exists. That's a very reversed engineered way of doing things, and it's also very stressful. So when you have an idea and you can start to look at these things more strategically, you can start to put framework around understanding how these functions work, how and when you make decisions. It really makes your life so much easier because you don't need to master everything here. You just need to know enough around who are the right people to go to and what are some of the key decisions that I will need to make as it relates to these various topics. All right. Okay, so when we talk about human resources, I always love to just completely shock people when I say this because when I say, what is human resources? And people say, oh, well, that's, organization and they're going to help set up things and be there for your people. Honestly and truthfully, again, I've been doing this for a quarter century almost. HR, we're certainly here for the entire organization, but most of our time is not spent with employees. And I'll explain to you why that is. And this will make more sense to you as a business owner. So, as a business owner, human resources for you is a function of your business. And you'll hear me say this often. Human resources is a function, not a person. Okay? And this will help to explain to you why. So, human resources as a function of your business. Think about your finance, think about accounting, think about business development, program management. Like these may be sales, right? There may be different functions within your business. Human resources is a function within your business. And what do? We help keep the organization compliant around things that we have to keep our eyes on as it relates to the legal environment. If you are an employer in the United States of America, we also help to identify things as it relates to hiring trends, attracting and retaining talent, onboarding, performance management training, all of these things that we talk about. We actually refer to that as the employee life cycle. So human resources as a function, again, not a person, but a function of your business, is concerned about attracting, retaining talent, onboarding, making sure they have a smooth transition into being new into an organization or a team, learning and development, rewards and recognition, performance, and even things related to retention and exit. There are some times where, like for instance, I might hire a business development person specific to a new product launch, and that might be in the plan for, say, the first 5 years because you're trying to get a certain population of early adopters to your technology that requires a certain skill set. But once you've built that marketplace up, then it can move to someone who has a broader skill set and less of a specialized. So there are a lot of ways. Like I said, not everybody is a 30-year employee, and that's okay. And I think in our world, the way that we have gig economy and also the way we do a lot of our planning cycles, which you really can't plan out more than maybe 2 or 3 years at a time. You can visualize, of course, but when we're talking about actual planning, we typically look at 1 to 3 years as a good mark because things just change so quickly. So I just share that because, again, just try to give you a little bit of perspective is these are the things that, from my perspective and from our perspective as practitioners, that are always on our mind, and we're keeping our eyes and ears open for either opportunities to close the gap on compliance, or even maybe, again, maybe we're having challenges with recruiting, so we break down and look at why. Are we paying enough? Are we looking for the right skill sets? Again, all of these things come out through the advisement of your HR professionals. And I say that sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's a team. Okay. So again, you're a business owner. So think about this as your function. HR is the function, not the person. Okay. So I show you, I love this slide actually. It really breaks down for you the different components of HR and why I talk about HR as a function, not a person, because you are planning for the needs of the business. You're not planning for the limitations of one person. So the reason why I explain that is if you hire a person in human resources and you've hired them for something, there are certain specialty skills that you may not get. You may or may not. I'm not saying that you won't, but I'm just saying that you can bottleneck yourself, your progress and your growth and your function. You can bottleneck that by selecting the wrong levels of skill to do your building. And here's what I mean by that. So when we look at HR as a function, it has two components. We have what we call growth enablers. These are the organizational levers. These are what I also call underutilized HR, because these are the more strategic ends of what we do. And unless you've been in leadership roles or you have your own business, you don't get as much insight into these things. Now, at the bottom level is what we're very familiar with, which we call the fundamentals, the must-haves, and things that mitigate risk. So again, that's always on HR's mind, one way, shape, or form. So at the bottom here, we have HR compliance, and that's all of our legal compliance, all the laws and regulations and new laws and regulations that like to pop up as frequent as needed, depending on what's maybe new or different topics that are pretty prevalent. So when we talk about HR compliance, sorry about that here, that ensures that we're operating the business, we're doing all of the things that we're required to from the state, from the federal, and sometimes even there's local municipality requirements as it relates to having employees or hiring. And that's where we make sure that you're compliant. Compliance are the things that you hear people talk about, like, oh, you can get fined for this or you can get sued for that, right? Like, so that's what I call scary HR. I'm not a scary HR person. I'm a solution driver. So what I mean by that is the compliance is not there to scare you, but it is for you to make sure that you're fully aware of what some of the risks are as it relates to your business. So people that specialize or have backgrounds in compliance will help you to navigate that. And they'll also help you to identify levels of risk, because just because there's risk doesn't mean that, I always say this to my clients, if you do this, it doesn't mean the police are going to come to your door, guns drawn, right, ready to take you down. It just means that there are risky factors. It can be risky factors as it relates to external compliance with whomever, EEO, etc. Or it could also be internal risk where you could be disrupting some of the flow or dynamics of your culture or your environment. So that's where, again, a lot of the compliance is going to be, again, on the legal side of things, but that's where a compliance person comes in. Next level is called HR administration. So after we've identified what we have to do fundamentally, and what we have to comply around, then that creates the processes that we use to compile those series of tasks. We call that administration. So we're very familiar with administration, most of us, because you've seen and interfaced with HR even as an employee, if you've been an employee at some point in your career. That's where you see things like people always talk about the forms, and I have this whole another series about forms and how we don't deal with paper anymore, but we'll call them forms for because they really are. But everything's electronic and digitized now, so it's again a very different world in terms of how we manage the HR function. And this again will hopefully give you a little bit more insight. So that's where you get into any sort of tracking or record keeping, reporting, anything like that, because a lot of times the compliance requires me to do that. I need to track, I need to report, or I need to certify that you're able to work in the United States, or whatever their requirement is. There's usually some sort of documentation that supports that compliance process. So that's where we get into HR admin. And that's where most people recognize HR as, oh, you did my paperwork for me on my first day. Well, yeah, that's one day of your entire career and the equivalent of maybe a few hours. So again, it's not the totality of how we support employees in an organization, but it is something that people are familiar with. Now we move up a level to HR operations. HR operations is where, oh my God, we've got a lot of administrative things to track, or a lot of people. We have a lot of compliance that we need to be responsible for. So what HR operations does is it ensures that our HR initiatives, that they're cost effective, they run smoothly, and they contribute to the benefits of the business. And I say benefits not just because of health and welfare benefits, but my point is with that is that's process. That's process improvement, that's systems, that's HRIS systems, which HRIS stands for Human Resources Information Systems. That's where we house all of the employee data and their performance history, and we can do analytics off of that and give insights into trends related to the business, right? So that's where we operationalize HR. And typically you move up to an operational level when you start to grow and you start to need to take on volume. The other time operations is a good time to think about that is if you're on the cusp of a growth spurt, so that you're not bottlenecked by certain types of manual processes, or you don't have the volume. Your processes are not designed to handle volume, or you don't have the expertise that you need to manage more complex navigation of things that you're required to do for your business, whether it's things you're required to do for payroll, you're for taxes, you're reporting, whatever it happens to be. If you do any sort of contracting, always look for any sort of requirements they have around maybe DEI or hiring practices, or they may have certain expectations they want for, some sort of, like fair hiring procedures or something. Those sometimes will be worked into contracts. So sometimes that can influence these things changing very quickly. The next level up is what we call the HR business partner. So the HR business partner, now, when I say next level up, these are not hierarchical positions, meaning it doesn't mean the person at the bottom makes less than the person at the top. There are generalists and specialists in all of these areas. So it's not a representation of pay. It's just giving you a sense of really, in a sense of how much of your time in your business do these types of aspects of HR come to fruition for you. So just keep that in mind as we talk about the levels here. Now, this HR business partner level, this is one of my favorites. That's my background. I come from what we call the HR business partner model. And so the HR business partner model is your internal consultant. And so, what they are always looking to do is align your strategy with the activities and the action items that we take within the organization. So, it's really your glue between your strategic planning, your goals, your objectives, your mission, your vision, your values. We take all of that and we put that into actual implementing or things that we can actually implement. So that's where I love the HRVP, because I call it where the rubber hits the road, right? So that's actually where we get to put the practices in play and put things in motion to actually achieve those results. And so it's a really satisfying part of the business for me to be able to see how my contributions contribute to the organization's success. And most of us, especially us that have been doing this for a while, we can show you how that is aligned. That's another part to this, is showing how the people practices can support and accelerate your business and not bottleneck and slow them down. If you look at HR as a person, not a function, or you limit your view of HR, it will be your bottleneck. However, if you kind of expand your mind and really think of this more strategically, it will be one of your best enablers, and I can show you why. So at the top of this, we call the HR strategy. So HR strategy is very much, again, it's a lattice intertwined of the organizational strategy. So it may be we take the organizational strategy and we create subsets of that that are people focused, or we have specific strategic objectives that have people practices or some sort of people focus. I tend to lean to the latter. I like to make sure that we have at least one strategic priority that is related to people. Now, again, we can shape that out further in terms of various activities, but I think that it's important to at least have that very well defined and clarified, because that will help influence various things we recommend within the organization. So whether it's workshop, training, professional development, engagement, the activities themselves do not drive what we do. The strategy drives what we do. That's my needle that says, here's where we're going, north, south, east, west. Oh, okay, we're going this way. And then I look and I shape everything out that helps us to move in that direction. And so when you think about that, again, all these pieces and parts, this comes together for you on a regular basis. Sometimes we don't see it or visualize it this way, but this is something that you're seeing, feeling, and experiencing regularly. Reason why I spend a little bit more time on this slide is because a lot of the pain points that people have with HR, and especially as a business owner leader, is because they don't understand the breakdown. Here's what I mean by that. And I'll just give a real life example. I had a client who says, well, I think we should implement X tool so that we could make a better use of our time and recap meetings. Okay, well, that's all well and good, but what problem are we trying to solve? Because, yes, could it help? It certainly could. Could it not help? It certainly could not. Could it create change fatigue for your staff of having to learn new things and in and out? And this, we're trying this. All of these things are things you have to think about. So if I have a strategy and I'm understanding that maybe we want to improve communications within the organization, again, I'm keeping it broad for illustration purposes. We want to make sure that our employees have the tools that they need to do their job, and we've determined communication is an area we want to improve. Well, if communication is an area we want to improve, then I'm going to look at what are the variety of activities that will help us to improve communication. It's not like we just randomly say, oh, let's pick this tool or let's do this. That's what creates dissatisfaction, disconnection, disengagement, and it creates a lot of poor experience for people in the workplace when we don't think of these people things as it relates to how we're moving them through and to the direction we want them to go, versus just kind of trying things, right? And I say that, kind of, again, a little bit tongue in cheek. That's something we could certainly talk into deeper when you're talking more about your strategic planning. But my main thing of this is just understand there's layers to this. And if you're experiencing frustration at any point, you probably either don't have the right person that has the breadth of skill sets that you need, or you might be on the cusp of a next level in your business, which is normal, and you need some help navigating that. And that's completely okay. All right. So this is what ties this together for you on the last side. There are phases in your business, and there are also phases in terms of how HR grows and scales with your business. So when I talk about this, depending on where you're at, gives you an idea of some of the things that either start to emerge or start to become a requirement for your business as you grow. So, for instance, if you're in the build and the foundational, I call it build and foundational, that's where we have foundational HR. That's that compliance. Fundamentally, I want to make sure that you're doing the things that are going to mitigate you from having to get fines or any kind of complaints or etc. Right? So that's our foundational HR. It also gets into some of the administration because I want to be efficient. I'm trying to mitigate risk. I'm also thinking about what does the future look like, and what sort of things do we need to plan for in your HR practices to accommodate that. For instance, I have a client, they are right between build and run. And so they're right on that cusp. And so I have to think about how can I prepare their HR function to take on things at the run phase. So sometimes I call it build a little bit ahead. Like for instance, maybe you have one employee right now, maybe you have three, maybe you have just yourself, right? Let's build what the organization, what you believe it will look like, and let's start to scope out what do leadership levels look like, what are some of the key roles that you're going to need. Let's draft job descriptions and let's price that. It doesn't mean you're going to hire that person tomorrow, but it does mean when you do get ready to hire that person, you know what we're looking for. So I think of it like a house, whereas if you come to me and say, Dina, build me a house, and I say, oh, that's great. Let's talk about some of the things you need. You say, hey, it's just me and my significant other right now, but we're going to think about expanding our family. It's better for me to give you and build you a 4-bedroom house now versus a 2-bedroom house and then come back in a couple of years when you decide to have babies and try to add on a whole, all these additions each time you have a baby, right? Like it's so much more work to do it that way versus you just have a couple extra rooms until you're ready to grow into it. So think about that in terms of your HR function because you can grow into things, and it helps you to be able to move quickly and to scale. If you don't do that, HR is going to be like, I'm going to have to do all these things to figure out what do you want to do, where you want to go, right? So we're going to feel like you're bottleneck. When you get into your run phase, that's when you're pretty well established, you've got some good rhythm. Your run phase, that's where we operationalize HR. We look for efficiencies, automation. I may even start to get into more vendor management because now I'm looking for other partners that I may need to bring in. I might bring in a training partner or bring in a workshop facilitator, or I'm managing vendors now. Like again, I'm managing a whole function and operation of things. And that's typically where you start to see a lot more of your tools and automation. So I'm also getting pretty much heavy into technology at that point. Your grow phase, that's where we get into the team building, the leadership development, continuous improvement. We may even start to be thinking about things like executive comp packages, other benefits, expanding our leave of absence options. So these are the things where, again, we're anticipating or in that growth phase, and we want to make sure we're competitive. We want to make sure that we have a well-rounded suite of things. Think about that wheel, that life cycle. We want to make sure that we're keeping our eye on that and having a good set of offerings for our employees at every phase that they're in our career or their career with us. We want to make sure they have a good onboarding experience and they have opportunities for professional development. And again, we're looking at ways to reward our senior leaders and things like, like I have a client right now where business development is a big initiative. And so we're going to carve out some rewards and bonus programs. Like if you help us with giving us a unique lead and we're able to take it into a contract, and hey, let's kick back, let's give some, rewards and things related to that. So that's very strategic. We want everybody in the organization to be thinking about business development, right? So again, all these things come out. Sunsetting, sometimes here, and I put this here because we don't always think about sunsetting. Not every business is going into business. Again, I call it the 30-year model, right? Like, we're not all in business to do this and turn it off to our, next generation of children that will maybe take it over. Sometimes we build a business to sell it, right? You build it to scale. That is your scaling, or you are the BD part of that particular process of an industry. Especially manufacturing and engineering and different things. You may be the business developer and you build it to a point and you sell it, right? So that can certainly be part of your or you're gonna sell, like, my aunt, she sold insurance. She had her agency for like 35 years, and she perpetuates, called perpetuation. They sold her book of business over to another agent, right? So there's all these things to think about. You don't have to think about them every day. You don't need to stress them, but think about, again, that bubble. Those are things that come up, but again, make sure you get the right people on your team to help you sort it out. All right, hiring HR expertise. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly for time's sake, because I want to leave some time for questions. But when I talk about HR is a function, not a person, this gets a little bit into the people that you might hire and some of the skill sets that we have. So we have generalists and we have specialists. And again, they may have different titles, but just give you kind of a breakdown. Your generalists, again, I call it the player coach. We're tactical and strategic. We do also a lot of fair amount of employee facing. So if there is employee facing necessity, if they have anything, that's usually your first line of defense. And you typically see generalists, again, it can be a manager, it can be a director, it doesn't matter the title so much, but just the skill sets are more general. So I come from the generalist background. I've refined into more specialist skill sets as I've matured, right? So kind of that's how a lot of us come through. So I have a very broad knowledge, but I also have very deep knowledge. So that's where a specialist comes in, is where you have very deep, specific knowledge. So you may see coaches, you may see consultants. A lot of times they're going to be more in the, I don't say they're not going to be in any particular, they can be in any phase because there's specialty skills that are needed within each phase. But it's something where I need someone that's like maybe a change management specialist, or I need someone who's a recruiter, right? Like a recruiter is a specialist, right? So there's certain specialty skill sets. Now, that doesn't take away from the generalist at all. It just means that there are certain times where you do need certain specialty skills. Again, I come from generalists, I have specialty skills, and there are times where I'm going to be better or not in certain situations, so I will call in a specialist, right? So it's, again, all something to keep in mind as you're building out your team. It may be more than one person. If you work with people like myself, we typically have partners that we work with that fill some of the gaps of areas that we may be not as broad as deep. When you're hiring HR, couple pitfalls. Again, just get it out your mind that HR is admin only. Like, again, I hope that the first half hour here has blown that out of the water and completely shattered that expectation that HR is just this admin function, and here's the forms, and go off and do your form thing, people, and talk to my employees, right? It's worlds beyond that. And actually, to be honest with you, and I go back to the employee facing time, I give this example. I'm not sitting there, if I work for, say, a corporation and I'm full time, I would always say, I don't sit here 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, which is 2,080 hours. I do not come in here and have 2,080 hours worth of questions from employees on things. It's a very small percentage of what we do. Very important what we do, but it's not as frequent as we think or know it, or think it to be in some cases. Most times we're dealing with leadership. We're working with the systems and processes and the programs that support the people function. So again, why I talk about it as a function, not a person. The other is making sure common pitfalls are you underestimate your needs of HR, some of the complexity, which is why I show you the breakdown and the phases so you can get an idea. And you'll have these slides as well to refer back to. The other is relying on sales reps. I love sales. Sales is one of my most favorite functions of the business. I work a lot as an HR professional with sales reps, and they are very beneficial, but they're there to help you to understand their products and services. They may not always have the breadth of what you need holistically for your organization. So certainly they're going to be very helpful in understanding features, benefits, and things like that of their products. But you want to make sure you have some internal expertise that can help you navigate that and make good decisions. Because, like I said, we're not doing, as an HR professional, I don't quote unquote do everything. I may have a vendor, I might outsource, I might have a system, I set up a process. I'm not really touching a lot of things physically anymore. I'm managing systems and processes that come together that I usually am constructing, right? So some ways to mitigate that are, again, HR is a function, not a person. Your HR needs will evolve. So if you, again, when I talk about these pain points or these pressure points you feel, if you feel that, just take a pause and be like, oh, if I feel that, that usually means I need to get ready for something else. So don't look at it as, oh my God, I'm stuck, or don't look at it as defeatist. Look at it as kind of like that little pain point you have is the indication that you're ready to start evolving your HR. And that can usually be months in advance. And again, like I said, we can always build for the future that you can grow into. And I always recommend that versus waiting till you've got all these contracts and you need all these people and your hair's on fire. And now, you're trying to scramble to get things done. Again, sales reps, very valuable, but make sure you can sort through what they're saying. And no matter who you contract to do things for, you're always going to need somebody internally or that's a partner for you to help manage some of that. So, like, for instance, I have clients, they have a payroll vendor. Perfectly okay. I'm not a payroll person. I don't process payroll as a profession. I can advise on infrastructure and process and so forth, but I'm not a payroll processing function that I outsource, but there are companies that are. So I will work with them to make sure that we have the right questions asked, or maybe there's certain things like garnishments. Are we handling garnishments? Or are they handling them? So I can make sure they are asking the right questions so that things don't fall through the cracks. And that we also know internally what we need to do to help share information or manage that relationship. And that's it. Again, I don't, that's all I might need to do in a situation is help advise and get those things established. I don't necessarily always have to be there for every transaction. So again, I just use myself as the example and the guinea pig here. Okay. So there are some great links and resources for you that we will leave you with. And again, I'm just going to go through them very quickly. But Ohio has a website called Hiring Your First or Next Employee. I recommend you flag this if you're an Ohio business for sure. The other thing to look at is this, and I'll take a pause here. Your what you need to comply with when you're talking about laws and things like that, it follows the employee, not the business. So if your business is located in Ohio and you're hiring employees in Ohio, this is going to be a great resource. Or if your business is not in Ohio and you are hiring employees in Ohio, this will be a great resource. If you are an employer who's based out of Ohio, but who hires someone in Pennsylvania, you now need to look at the Pennsylvania guide to hiring your first and next employee, because you need to comply with the laws of the state in which your employees reside, not where the business is established or the business is located. So I'm going to assume we all do business in Ohio and just share this resource because it is great. All of the state websites have them. You'll go to their Department of Labor website and you'll be able to get their version of this. Ohio, in my opinion, is one of the best. They really lay it out. It's very simple. It walks you through each step and everything that you need to do to make sure that you're compliant. It has links for every place that you need to go. It's one of the better in the vast sea of the states of United, right? I work across the US and I've also done some international as well, HR support. And so you have to know how to navigate these because, again, the laws and what you need to comply with, of course, federal, but you have to look at the state in which the employee resides. Now, a lot of times, just quick tip for you, think about this in your remote world because you can say, hey, I'm going to hire remote. You can work wherever you want. Well, that's great. Well, this person goes and works in Florida for 6 months, and then they come back, and then they go to California for 3 months, and then they don't tell you all this, right? So these are things that you have to think about in this remote environment, because people think they can just go wherever, and you may not want to do business in a particular state. And if you hire someone in that state, the state assumes you're doing business. That's a whole nother workshop we can go into, but I just wanted to highlight that. And then highlight again, Ohio is a great resource. So if you hire folks within the good old Ohio, we have great resources. So I'm not going to go through this, but I did a breakdown for you of some areas of compliance that you want to make sure you flag as it relates to your business, and how it breaks down with the areas of HR. So, like I said, everything from equal pay, drug testing, and, again, I kind of give you some things to think about at each phase. And it's all following that wheel, that nice colorful wheel that we have. And these are some of the compliance arms that I keep up with, or that you need to be aware of to make sure that you're compliant. Because again, that's our foundational. Before we get into anything, let's make sure we're compliant. The thing about compliance, though, it can be a little dry. It can sometimes not, but it also it's very repeatable in a lot of cases. Now you have to adjust for new things that come in, but you can operationalize these pretty quick. And when you operationalize these, you don't have to deal with it on a regular basis. You have schedules and calendars and things that you can manage to make it much more time effective. So these are, again, resources that you'll have available to you. I also have, and I'll go back to the poll. Actually, I'm going to go back to that. I also have other resources that I carved out for you as well that have links. So when you're looking at pay and labor, comp and pay, and even payroll service providers, again, these, I don't recommend people. I don't have any sort of affiliate or any sort of partnerships with any of them. These are ones that I've worked with in different respects. So I have some firsthand knowledge of them. But I also give just different resources to, looking at law firms, and there are offered, like ONET is a good free resource for job descriptions, salary ranges, things of that nature that sometimes may cost money. So again, these are some good free resources for you, good links that you can keep on hand. And this part, I am going to ask one poll question. And I'll ask you to put your answer in the chat. So I will pull up the chat here. So this will be our final poll question before I open up for questions. And I want to just make sure we're all on the same page here, right? So when we think about human resources, and again, you can use the chat for your answer, is human resources a function of the business responsible for the people parts of the business? Or is human resources a person who handles complaints, plans parties, and files paperwork? All right, let's see what you got. All right, perfect. Passed. Everyone's passed. 100%.
I think you got through to them.
All right, guys. Well, I'll go ahead and, like I said, I'll turn it over, Anita.
We have a couple of questions. One is, my business is in the growth stage with 9 employees now. I found that the HR aspect of running a business is the most time-consuming and taxing. Knowing all of the new laws plus onboarding and offboarding is a pain. I have a benefits advisor for my employees and my employees' health insurance. Do people like that exist for HR?
Oh, yes, for sure. So, a couple of things. Depending on the size of your business and what you're looking to accomplish, can help you to determine that. So, what I'm talking about is, do you need a generalist or a specialist skill set? So, I brought up this phases of the business in terms of how HR grows with you, just for a little bit of illustration. This is not hard and fast by far, but like I said, you can move very quickly through phases. So there are definitely professionals out there. Like I said, I use myself as the example. I consult with a lot of businesses in terms of more strategic direction, but also putting that strategic direction into place. So you might want to look for someone who does things like organizational development, who also does strategic HR consulting. You may also see talent development, talent management, because that's a body of things that we do that really help support things like growth and development, recruiting, onboarding, retention. So that's a talent management type professional. But absolutely, what I share with people is you really want to think about what are you trying. What like, I always think, and this is a question I ask my clients all the time: what problem are you trying to solve? Then you work backwards. So that will help you. I'm trying to increase the engagement in my organization and the morale. I feel like either through retention or actually that would be turnover, through turnover or hard times attracting talent through recruiting. I think that's an area we need to work on. So that will help you to figure out who the right people are. Is I call it reverse engineering. Like what problem are we trying to solve? And then that will help us to carve out the kind of skill sets that you might need. Another quick tip, and I'll end there, is if you have like a lot of my clients, I will help them figure out who's what other partners they may want to work with. I'm not going to be there for everything and everyone. Like I said, I can help advise you on, okay, well, here's the time where we need a specialist, or here's the time where you can hire the admin person. Because I do a lot of setting things up automated for clients, and then you can hire an admin person to keep it up. And then you just call me, or I come in at various points through the year to either check on things or do certain filings or reports for you. So very, very flexible. But to your point, start with your problem and then work back. And then that really helps you get the right person.
Okay, another question. What do you think about the online HRs like Bambi?
What do I think? Okay. I'll be diplomatic here. I think that there are solutions that fit all businesses. I don't think all solutions fit all businesses, right? If that makes sense. I feel like there's always a place for what your business needs. For some people, that might be the a solution, or it might be something to help them get to another level. Because here's where I think services like that are helpful is on this foundational HR that we talk about here, this compliance and admin. Those are very commonly outsourced in our world, particularly as most of our HR functions internally, like when we start to become employees of an organization, and even like as consultants, we're pretty lean and they want us to run pretty lean. So we look for ways to build efficiency and we look for partners to do that. So I think that your Bambis and people like that, there's a place for them. But I wouldn't entrust them to all things as it relates to my business because, again, they are there to increase your usage of their products or services, whereas that can take away some objectivity in terms of looking at things beyond that. So that's where I just say you can be limited, but I think they're very good for handling a lot of your HR, your admin, and your compliance. But there are also very efficient free tools. Well, I'd call them free, but or they would come with a say like a bigger HRIS system. There's things that you can do to simplify that. I simplified my process on DocuSign. I don't know, 8, 9 years ago before DocuSign got really popular over the pandemic. But there's so many ways to do this, but there's a place for everything, I say. But not everything is the right solution for everyone.
Okay. Selena has raised her hand and I'm going to allow her to ask her question. So Selena, you want to go ahead? Yeah, you can unmute yourself. Selena? Yeah, I don't know.
I'm fine. I had my hands up before trying to alert you that we couldn't hear you before. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Melvin, you want to unmute yourself?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I hit it by accident.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
apologize. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we're I think we've covered, let me just check here, see if there's, oh, what is the cost for HR professionals?
Well, it's going to vary. It'll vary based on, again, what your needs are. And that's why I just think about a little bit of what are you looking for? Are you looking for someone to advise you over the shoulder? Sometimes that can help to reduce costs where I work with clients and I'm kind of over the shoulder guiding them through things and questions to ask and so forth. So there's that level of support. There's other clients that want you to take on the entire function. Like, you are my HR function. I want you to lead this, drive this, run this. That it kind of is a little bit more responsibility, so that can influence the cost. And there's times where you're more project based, where it's specific. Like, I have a client, they want to improve their onboarding program, so it's very specific around including that or improving those experiences, and that has more of a time box to it. So those are some ways that you can think about paying for your HR professionals. Again, the time box is going to be more time boxed and predictable with cost. Your over the shoulder is a way to have someone that's always there with you, is more, again, advisory. A lot of times you're paying them, of course, like maybe a retainer or some sort of agreement for their time and expertise. And then there's the full on, let me take over an HR function. So I think about what your needs are, what you're most comfortable with, and where you're at in terms of the needs of your business. And then your pricing will flow from there.
Okay, I think that's it. So Dina, thank you so much. I think the resources that you've provided will really be very helpful to everybody, and there's lots of good information here. So
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure that everybody got a lot out of it, and I certainly learned something every time I watch it. And really thank you so much for doing this. And I hope everybody has a pleasant evening, and we'll maybe see you at the next one. So